Let's begin. Welcome to the JDC West 2021 accounting case presentation sponsored by CPA. Thank you to our judges for attending this afternoon. Brian Schoonbart, Stefan Normando, Jennifer Marlowe, Chris Paulus, and Shelley Lukasiewicz. Competitors, you will have a maximum of 20 minutes to present. Immediately following the presentation, judges will have a total of 5 minutes to ask presenters any questions. My name is Nick, and I am the academic moderator who will be timekeeping and controlling the overall flow of the presentation format. Time intervals will be noted in the Zoom chat by myself beginning at the 10-minute mark. Following the presentation, I will facilitate question and answer period. Judges will indicate their intent to ask a question using the hand raise function, which I will call on them to indicate the next question. No questions or comments will be permitted from the audience at any point in time. The audience is also prohibited from communicating to the presenters in any form, including Zoom or via mediums such as during the presentation or during the question and answer period. If you are an observer, please ensure your camera is off and your microphone is muted at this moment. Once the question and answer period has completed, the Zoom meeting will also end. Competitors, good luck. You're free to begin your presentation and share your screen.
All right, can you guys see my screen okay?
Yes.
All right. The only thing that's been constant in life has been change. And this has been more evident than us in the last year than ever before. We changed the way we work, the way we communicate, and the way we shop. But change is a good thing. It's something to be embraced. Change comes as an answer to our current problems. And those who can embrace it in their personal lives and in business will come out on top. So we have a way for code ninjas to embrace the change that's come with this new COVID landscape and how to thrive now and into the future. We bring you Operation Download. The objective today is to assist code ninjas in being able to adapt to this business landscape and time their entry to market. Our questions are how can they adapt and where do they need to adapt? What do you want to do with your physical location in terms of the grand opening? And then how can you ensure that you set up well to thrive in the future after COVID is over? In Operation Download, the first step, creating a firewall. This comes with establishing a virtual presence for your business to operate online. Next, you're going to build an antivirus. Postpone the grand opening of your physical location until June of 2021, and then launch the app. You can obtain contracts to work with the public sector through schools. As an impact, you can see a profit margin of 20% within 2 years. So how do you need to adapt first of all? We should establish that COVID-19 is very unpredictable, and with that, businesses have to be proactive. Going virtual is a necessity, not an option. You can see it from business and consumers' perspective. Businesses want to offer their best product, but that has to be coupled with the need for consumers to feel safe. So really, it's a trade-off between the two of those. How can businesses put their best foot forward without jeopardizing the safety need for consumers in COVID times? We have to acknowledge that COVID-19 isn't over, and it's not going to be over in the near future for what we can see. The cases are projected to continue to surge, especially in Ontario and Quebec. Further, there's been delays with the vaccine rollout. This means the light is at the end of the tunnel, but it's becoming further and further away. So being proactive to adapt to these changes is more important than ever. The physical location will be an asset, but it's a financial drain today, as there's currently no near future where that will be able to be operational. Prepare for the worst and hope for the best. So Code Ninjas has to take advantage of an online environment to be able to lower their costs today and stabilize their revenues. But what about the physical location? It is a long-term asset, but those extra costs, as I mentioned, are not necessary today. By delaying the opening of the physical location until June, you can save on expenditures of $11,000 in operating and $100,000 in capital expense to do with leasehold improvements and furniture. This also addresses some COVID concerns. It'd be a strong social stance to be proactive in delaying business operations to ensure consumer safety. Further, allowing you to remain flexible to different changing public health orders that are seemingly coming every 2 weeks. So you'll gain respect from the community and remain agile by delaying the grand opening of your physical location. But why should we have one at all then? It's important to establish that brand presence in an increasingly competitive landscape. And further, in the future, offer flexibility to those parents who do need someone to drop their kids off extracurricular activities. So although it is a long-term asset, you can save costs and benefit from your social reputation by delaying the grand opening. But what about the future? When things are back to normal, how can code ninjas continue to thrive in an increasingly competitive landscape? Well, we know that the consumer's time is scarce, and the population isn't growing anytime soon. That being said, competition is increasing. So we have to rethink our role in extracurriculars. We know that Ontario's school board is looking to add coding to their school curriculum. That being said, they currently have a low teacher supply, as teachers have been increasingly reducing their hours due to the stress of COVID-19. So there's an opportunity here to access kids' time that they spend in school through working with the school board. Through that, the government will actually be funding the coding education of these students. That being said, you can gain access to the underprivileged students that you want to help so badly without taking a pay cut on your end. That is, if you go through the school system, the government will be essentially paying the education for these underprivileged students to get that essential coding knowledge that you can deliver. Looking at the average day of a student, predominantly their day is spent in school, with fractional hours spent at home, relaxing, and doing other extracurriculars. That 3 hours of extracurricular time is very competitive, balancing out other sports, dance lessons, and musical instruments. So we want to access the 6 hours that they're guaranteed in school. This is where code ninjas can really gain a foothold in the industry and have a stable revenue source for years to come. And I'll pass up to Connor to go over some other alternatives we've considered.
Thank you, Kyle. It's very important to highlight the fact that there is a need to go virtual. That being said, we do need to consider all of the different opportunities ahead of you and what you can do to connect with the community today. So let's take a look at the overview. So we need to consider exactly what are the impacts of this changed environment upon your current financial projections and what it looks like going forward. So we're going to take a look at the questions of what financing possibilities exist given this changed environment, as well as should the franchise adapt and how so? So we'll take a look at exactly which projections do need to be changed while considering all of the reductions in the fiscal revenues that happened as a result of this delay. So just before we get into all of the projections, we need to acknowledge the fact that there are some adjusted expenses that need to be taken into account. Currently, for the projections, you have a recorded expense at $55,200 for interest, but that is actually the payment and not going to be the interest expense, which will impact the tax payable at the end of the year. As well, there's currently no depreciation recorded on these leasehold improvements. However, as per our projections, you will face up to $15,000 in those future years. So all future projections will have that taken into account. So the first thing we do need to look at is understanding the status quo. What happens at the current rate of earnings? So looking at these projections, we can see that the franchise continuing as originally planned has really low net income. And this does not take into account the opportunity cost that U2 owners have as successful people, as an independent consultant and as a director of purchasing. So we need to take a deeper look at this. Over a 5-year span, we actually see that there is a negative net present value. This is due to the fact to the reduced revenues, as well as all of the adjusted expenses, which actually will drive up those costs. So going forward as originally planned will not suffice in this current environment. So something does need to be done. So let's take a second look at the status quo, but more specifically at an event where there is reduced signups. So in this projection here, we have even lower net incomes across all of the years. That is because with the lack of the grand opening and the sign-up effect not experiences, revenues will be significantly lower, but expenses will be relatively the same. So over a 5-year span, as we will be able to see, there is an even worse net present value. So this, again, is really just here to highlight the fact that something needs to be done today. So let's take a look at some of the assumptions here. So we have 75% of the projected signups, adjustments for the depreciation interest, and the fact that we're going to have at maximum 1/3 of those physical revenues, assuming even that COVID is over by summertime, which is quite a hopeful expectation. So this is something we really need to consider carefully. In reality, the projected losses could be worse, especially if no proactive action is taken. So that being said, let's take a look at the other options set before you, considering a virtual experience. Is it profitable? Is it feasible? So in considering this, we're going to take a look at all of the working capital requirements associated with this project. As noted, there will be some additional costs associated with this as you transition. I'll also take a deeper look at that, and also the financial projection. So looking at the reduced physical revenues and also how much revenue can be generated by offering an online program. As well, one thing to also keep into account is Krista Mann's previous IT experience that could be a valuable asset in making this transition more seamless and more better experience for the students involved. So let's take a look at some of the financing possibilities as well as the total cost of the project. So we have the secondary loan as offered, which has 7.5% and equipment as collateral, and the personal line of credit, which has home as collateral, and the personal credit card, which has a high interest rate but no collateral. So taking a deeper look at these three items, we'll notice that the secondary loan will actually be the best option for your business since it's going to be the business assets as collateral, whereas the personal line of credit will risk your personal livelihoods. And with no current revenues, this is not the time to take on that personal line of credit to expand a business. The personal credit card will be something we'll consider later, only if absolutely necessary, even though it has a higher interest rate. So looking at some of the expected capital expenditures, assessing $100,000 for startup costs, assessing Krista Mann's ability to help transition in this period, will have $16,800 of net cash after expenditures over a 4-month period, which we will take a deeper look at going forward. Of course, this does consider delaying of some furniture and fixture expenditures. So this is something we will look at. So looking at the projections of forecasting this virtual component, we'll notice that there is a negative net income in the first year. This is because there are some additional expenses associated with the transition, but very quickly this turns profitable as those expenses are soaked up and then the revenues are generated from this transition. So we have some virtual pricing set to $190 compared to the physical revenue per month per student at $240 to reflect that the fact that the in-person experience is slightly better. So we're going to adjust the price downward as possible, also giving a 4-month setup time. So going virtual is the path to profitability given these current market conditions, given all of the uncertainty. And then looking at these 3 alternatives that we set up for you, continuing with the physical location, only going virtual, and going virtual while still developing the physical location, we've assessed 3 major components for your company to consider: the liquidity, the level of profitability, and the level of risk associated. With just the physical location, it simply does not adapt to the environment. Going only virtual does not maximize Code Ninja's intimacy with students personally, which gives them that sense of community that we are looking to develop. So going virtual while developing physical has some cash things that we need to work out, but at the same time, it will address short-term profitability while preparing to maximize the total returns. So I'll pass it off to Lynn to walk you through exactly how Operation Download will work.
Thanks, Connor. Moving on to our exciting recommendations, Operation Download today. We'll be getting into, first off, how can your company establish a visual presence? From the analysis, we see that Code Ninjas can take advantage of an online environment to lower costs and stabilize revenues. Krista and Abby, you are parents yourself. You understand the parents' priority to keep your children safe and healthy. And given the unpredictable consequence of the pandemic that's going on here, we believe that establishing online courses regarding your business of Code Ninjas is the optimal alternative to go with. We suggest your company charge a price of $190 for a 4-week course. This price is, yes, lower than the current price that you set up yourself, which is $240. However, $190 is still at the premium end of extracurricular classes, for example, martial arts or music. Given this level of pricing, your company will still be able to generate a positive net NPV of $900,000. We also suggest your company to keep the same structure for the classes with 1 instructor and 8 students. The classes will be virtual via Zoom. This allows the sensei, the instructor, to provide support to the students on a timely basis and also mimic the in-person classroom as well. Regarding software development, we suggest your company to utilize the free content that other branches have generously provided your company, as well as online content from the internet as well. We suggest your company to go through a screening process to make sure that these courses are high quality and match the needs of your target customer segment. In order to develop new courses for your students, we suggest your company to hire a team of software engineers who will be working over the next 2 months to set up a website for your company, as well as develop at least 6 courses for different levels. Key takeaway here is that going virtual will allow your company to definitely avoid the risk of losing businesses in the middle of the pandemic. So let's look at the expenses as well as the resources your company have regarding this exciting opportunity of going virtual. We estimate the total expenses to be $180,000. And given your company current amount of cash, we believe that your company has sufficient cash to develop the virtual programs. However, a secondary loan is needed in order to facilitate this project, mainly because your company has an ongoing physical construction. Moving on to the second part of the recommendation here, which is postponing grand opening. The reason is because, once again, we want to make sure your company mitigate the risks regarding the pandemics and address the parents' concern regarding their children's safety. Your company will also be able to save on operating expenses as well, at least $11,000, as Kyle has mentioned. We suggest your company to hire co-op students to take care of the marketing side of your business starting now, mainly because we want to make sure your company have a proper marketing campaign going on for the virtual courses. And the co-op student will also be taking care of the marketing side when you decided to open your physical location as well. We also suggest your company to delay the purchase of the hardware until 2 months in advance of the opening. And moving on to the last part of the recommendation here, which is launching the app. So from the analysis, we see that Code Ninjas can fulfill the need of school while ensuring stable revenue. We're not just looking at short term, we will also want to look further into the future. And we see that there's an opportunity for the company to obtain contract with the elementary school to provide coding classes as extracurricular activity. We suggest your company obtain temporary certificate. This is required by the Ontario government for the sensei to be able to act as instructor for your students. And this contract with the school would definitely allow your company to increase exposure to your target customer. Should the students be interested in this coding class, they would decide to further obtain more courses with your company and therefore increase your revenue, increase your profitability. We also suggest your company to postpone the support to the underprivileged kids as well. We do understand that you love to help out the community, and we definitely understand that. However, given the current conditions of your company at the moment, your company is very early on in the establishing stages. We want to make sure your company can retain enough cash to avoid insolvency. And therefore, we suggest your company postpone the plan for now and save on the cash, just build on your business, build a strong base, enter the school system later on. Once you enter the school system, the company will be able to get access to a larger network of underprivileged kids where you can offer them coding classes and offer them support. And now I'd like to pass, and before moving into implementations, we have a slide about financial impact here. So from our projection, we see that your profit margins will be at least 23% by next year. We also project your revenue to grow steadily over the next 5 years, starting 2021. The assumptions here is that your company will be able to open these physical locations by this year, and also grow virtually at least 25% per year. And now let's pass it off to Kyle, who's excited to talk about implementations.
So I'm sure you're all wondering what this is going to look like when we implement our plan. In 3 phases. Phase 1, in creating the firewall, focuses on building the online material that you're going to distribute to students. Includes hiring the team and creating the website that you can have to access your clients. A milestone is to have the website running by November, while a key performance indicator we're going to use is to have 100 students enrolled by the end of 2020. The cost, as limited over in the recommendation, is mostly to do with the development of the website and online materials. It'll be $180,000 overall. Looking at phase 2 now, building the antivirus. Looking here at when you're going to open the grand opening of your physical location. We're aiming to have it done by June. And a key performance indicator that we're going to know that we're on track is if your company is able to maintain that working capital ratio of 1.2, indicating financial health. There'll be $100,000 of cash outflows when this is all said and done, mostly to do with leasehold improvements and the acquisition of furniture. And then our third phase, launching the app. Working with the schools in the future to ensure the stability of your company and that you have access to the underprivileged kids that you can really help to further their future and make their futures brighter. We're going to look to obtain certificates to help access these schools throughout the summer. And then by the end of August, we should have contracts to elementary schools in the Ontario area start implementing our services in their school come September. The cost be around $10,000, including staff needed and to access these certificates from the government. But every plan has its own risks. And of course, one risk that you might be concerned of here is that there's just simply not enough cash for us to go through with these projects. Of course, in our financial forecasting, we've leaned on the conservative end when it comes to outflows. But you have highlighted that you do have personal credit cards that you're willing to use should you need it, which will only be used in an absolute worst case scenario. We'll know that this is going to be needed if the next few months of cash flow, the current sales simply aren't there. And then another one is that we might not be able to obtain these contracts with schools. Although we do see that there's a clear need for your services in these schools and demand for them from the Ontario government, they might not be able to strike a deal. If that is the case, we'll realize by July and start ramping up our marketing efforts to compete in the increasingly competitive sector. So in conclusion, we've come to the recommendation of Operation Download to help Code Ninjas not only survive through this COVID-19 time, but thrive coming out of it. We identified a segment in the educational sector that needs your services and is currently lacking the expertise. This will help you to create a social governance and really ensuring that you're making sure that your education is changing the lives of students for years to come. We'll open the floor up to any questions that you might have for us now.
Thank you, competitors. Yes, we'll now call upon the judges for any questions at this moment. We'll start with Stefan.
So yeah, you guys went with both like the in-store and the virtual learning. And I saw that you guys have increased your revenue like year to year on both. What would you do to mitigate the risk of like a market cannibalization?
Yeah, fair question. So there is obviously, that's a concern that we have with ours, with our services being online, maybe no one's going to even want to come into the store. To help mitigate that, that's what we have the in-school program. So students in school, the ones that are really keen, we can promote our own services to them externally to access our facility that is only within 5 kilometers of their elementary schools. There'll also be a place where parents can drop their kids off after school if it is something that they are really passionate about. So to summarize, we'll mitigate cannibalization by accessing the school sector as well and promoting our services through that.
Thank you very much. Next, we will call upon Jennifer.
How much of the forecasted revenues for the virtual offerings are dependent on securing the contract with the schools in Ontario?
Absolutely, great question. So in regards to the virtual revenues that we have forecasted, we are hoping that the schools can provide between 30 to 40% of all of those revenues. But we are also expecting that the schools will not provide the entire source of those virtual revenues, as those services will be able to be accessed not only in this town, but across Toronto and Ontario as well.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll call upon Brian.
Yes, further to the issue about trying to gain sales in school. So there's many competitors out there. How would you, I guess, market yourselves, or how would you convince schools that you're the vendor to select to bring it into the schools as compared to others?
Yes, we have definitely taken into consideration the fact that there are many competitors out there. It is a competitive landscape. And I believe that the value proposition that your company can promote yourself at is the fact that you will be able to provide the student with the customer intimacy, the instant support provided by the sensei if the student need help with their coding, if they have any questions. And the fact that we suggest your company to hold the classroom on Zoom, this has allowed students to network with each other as well. I say network is quite a big word for elementary students. However, they do need to definitely talk to each other, make friends, and just socialize that way. So that's definitely one of the key value propositions for your company as well.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll call upon Chris P.
think you may be stretching yourself too thin if you're trying to do the virtual that you need to develop the materials for still, and in person with the physical location, and negotiate the government contracts. How do you make sure that you can do all of that?
Yeah, for sure. That's a fair point. So we realized that it is essentially just the two of you owners. So that being said, that's why we want to orchestrate the online setup now. You can hit that going starting December, and we're not going to start negotiating with the schools until that's already been established come June. So come the summer is when we're going to start doing that once your operations have been integrated both online and their grand opening has been completed. That way you're not focusing on all of these 3 projects at the same time and stretching yourself too thin.
Are there any more questions from the judges? Yes, Brian.
You found the one error that was in the accounting, which was that you wouldn't deduct the principal, only the interest, correct? Was there anything else you found within that financial analysis?
Yes, there was. So the other main one that we found was there was no provision for the depreciation expense to reduce those taxes payable. As well as a smaller side note, there was deductions on the full amount of those office supplies, but really that should be expensed as those are used. So that would be a minor adjustment to make. So we focus on those major additions or changes to those financial statements.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have time for one last quick question from Shelley.
Sorry, I think you're on mute there, Shelley.
What about the initial franchise fee? Did you look at the accounting for that, and is that okay?
We have looked into the franchise agreement fee, and we do think that your company has applied proper accounting principle regarding this new fee, in which you capitalize as an asset and depreciate it as the time goes.
Perfect. Thank you very much, competitors. That is all the time that we have for today. If you could please leave the Zoom call at this moment, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.